Hi, I'm Ashley, and today I am joined with Cluney Gombar. Cluney is a therapist who has comprehensive expertise in the assessment, diagnosis, and treatment of mental health disorders. She actively recommends IEP and 504 plans for her patients and assists in tracking the progress with their families. All in all, Cluney is very familiar with this process, and I'm excited to have her on the podcast today. Welcome to the podcast, Cluney, and thank you for being a part of it.
Pleasure is all mine.
All right, so we're going to just jump right in. What is your experience with IEP and 504 plans, and how do they relate kind of to what you do?
Okay. As a therapist, I deal a lot of time with kids with mental health issue, which anxiety, depression, whether it's ADHD, whether it's autism, whether it's or any behavior or opposition to defiance disorder, or anything that can impact trauma, PTSD, anything that can impact a kid from performing in school, impacting their functioning. So when I do see a kids, not only I work with the kids in my office as far as learning to manage life, I have to be able to see all your symptoms impacting your functioning, because if you have a mental health issue, if it's not impacting your functioning, then it's not a mental health issue. So now, if it's impacting the kids at home, we have to set goals at home. But oftentimes you have kids with certain diagnoses, extreme anxiety and depression, ADHD, and autistic. The list goes on, that goes beyond, and I don't see the medical piece of it. Usually that's for the medical doctors. That goes beyond their ability to function at school. So when the kids is being impacted, or the kids refuse to go to school because they have extreme anxiety, or the kids just too depressed to wake up in the morning to go to school, or too depressed to function, too depressed to do their homework, the ADHD is out of control, they can function at school, or maybe there is a lot of trauma, they're being triggered at school. So all this thing, the minute that is impacting their ability to function at school, that's when we start making a requirement, what kind of accommodation that we can provide for the kids. At that point, based on the diagnosis and where they're at, we can decide, does this kids need a 504 plan or an IEP plan? My job in it is to kind of open the door for parents, because a lot of time parents come to me, they don't know, some of them don't even know such service existed, because they never had kids with them. They may have a kids they know is that my kids is not doing their homework, they're failing at school, they were doing so well, they're getting C's, they're getting this, I'm getting letters from the school. The parents don't even understand how to connect the child mental health, emotional disturbance to school performance. So my job is to help them, to guide them to say, okay, this is where your kids is at. Let's talk about how it's impacting them so we can make a decision. Usually I will tell them, okay, you need to call the school, and those are the things that we need to ask for the school. Usually it's like a 504 plan, which is an accommodation, or an IEP plan. And usually an IEP plan is more in-depth, and the school usually will see it as well if it's impacting the kids so severely. So basically my role is to guide the parents. If the mental health or whatever diagnosis is impacting the kids' level of functioning at school, or the academic performance, I should say, then that's when I kind of have a sit down with the parents to guide them, especially parents who have no idea such services exist in the school, especially for kids who goes to public school, because private school doesn't really do that. They don't have to, because the people that have to abide by 504 or an IEP plans, or school that get funded by state, so by taxpayers' money. Anything public, anything that is private, they don't have to do it. They don't have to abide by it. They usually don't, because they don't have the resources available to do that.
So I guess you kind of touched on another question about family involvement being huge kind of in this process. Can you just tell me a little about the process of kind of navigating these plans when families aren't really familiar with the programs, and just how to guide them?
Hard. It's very hard when familiar. For many reasons. You have some families that may not be familiar with it, but they can research it. You can tell them, they can look into it. They have a friend there. And you have some parents that they don't even, unfortunately at times, they don't even make the correlation between mental health and the kids functioning at school or performance. So it's making it so difficult. As far as family involvement, I think it's kind of guiding them to it, because they have to be involved in it, because no matter what, whether it's the IEP plan, whether it's a 504 plan, they have to sign on it. They have to be engaged. They have to be part of the the developmental process. When it's an IEP plan, I find that the school is more involved in the sense that sometimes the school is able to tell before the parents that the kids need something. They may, talk to the parents, or some parents, they will ask, they don't know which one they're asking for. They might ask for a 504 plan when the kids need an IEP, or an IEP plan when the kids need the 504. But it's all started with an initial meeting. Like, for example, if the parents have a kid, let's say, who has ADHD, or a kid with anxiety, for example, and this kid is having difficulty with testing, they will cry before tests, they will miss school before tests because they're so afraid of it, or they have difficulty public speaking. If they have to do presentation, that's a no for them. The parents will first send an email or call the school, speak it with the school counselor or the principal to request a meeting. Usually that meeting involves I usually attend those meetings. I love to attend those meetings, especially if I'm the one who asks the parent to do it. Involve the parents. Usually it's like the school counselor, the school social worker, a teacher, usually one teacher, not the special ed if it's 504, a teacher, and probably the principal and assistant principal, just to discuss what's going on, why is the parent requesting a 504 plan. So usually they'll sit together and make a decision on what the kids need. It's a shorter version because that decision can be made right into that meeting. This is the accommodation because it's just simply an accommodation. It doesn't change anything with the 504 plan. Usually by the time the parents is able to explain what their kids need, they can try to develop that plan. Of course, the parents have to sign it and everything else to make it into an abiding thing. But if it's a IEP plan, it's more in depth because you have a lot of assessment that need to be done. Usually the school have like a 30 days thing to start process, but the parents still have to be involved because even after they develop the plan, it's involved more like the teachers, the special ed teachers, the parents, the principal, school social work, the school psychologist. Usually that's the person that do all the testing, and the parents have to be involved in that. Unfortunately, what we see most of the time, the parents doesn't really know what they're asking for, so they don't have a real say. But sometimes the teachers are good at saying those are the struggle the kids have. Can we have X, Y, Z to put that into place? But the signature is still required. Without the signature, they don't have a plan. So that's to the extent. But when they do come to me, I try to guide them to kind of like, those are the strengths, those are what your kids need. This is what you need to talk to them about. This plan versus that plan.
Yeah.
And the school can pretty much good as far as if the kids is autistic, if kids have severe ADHD, or they're hearing impaired, or they're blind. There is 13 categories that the kids fall into IEP. Usually the school knows if you have any of those, you definitely need an IEP versus something that we just need accommodation to help you with your education to meet your goal.
So it's not really you kind of recommending IEP versus 504. You kind of get that from the school first. Some parents, if you have, depending how old is the kids, if you have a kids that starting, let's say, first grade, second grade, and this kid is autistic, with or without the parents' help with that diagnosis, the school will automatically determine that something is wrong with this child. Something is not right. And they will get the ball rolling. But when it's come to a 504 with something, let's say kids may have depression, anxiety, and things like that, usually I'm the one who will let the parents know. Or maybe, or the parents may know themselves, or maybe a medical health provider. Because usually kids, let's say if the kids have depression, the kids did not show up to school, but no one really know why the kids is missing school. Or maybe they're sleeping in the class. They don't really know that. Most likely teacher will send them to the principal's office because they don't know. So with that, once if I know a kid is struggling with that, normally I will tell the parents, we need to start thinking about a 504 plan because this is going to impact their functioning. Usually the IEP, the school is on top of that because it's severe. It's much, much severe. So if a kid is blind, automatically the school will know they have to have an IEP because that's really a change in the way they teach the kids completely. If that makes sense. Yeah, it definitely does. And then, like, in knowing that you recommend these programs and play a role in this process, do you notice like there needs to be change like over time with these plans, and how do you kind of come in and like address that?
Usually the plans have to be reviewed, once a year. Because I'm a very involved therapist, I don't like to just tell parents do it. I love to support, because a lot of time the parents might stick with the school, but they don't know how to formulate what their kids need. Usually what I love with a lot of school is allowing a therapist to come, because if I'm the one who diagnoses the kids, I have to send some formal document to the school. So the parents cannot say my kids have anxiety or my kids have ADHD or they have depression. It's have to be diagnosed, and the school has to have a document, like a paper. Usually it's a simple letter that I write to let them know this is what the diagnosis is, and those are the things the kids struggle with. Those are the specific symptoms that can impact their functioning, and those are the accommodation that can help. Usually to some extent I send the letter, and the school will share with me what the copy that they have, what they have. Usually I'm in the meeting to help with that, to help guide. Okay, this kid's gonna need like a extension on the work because of the anxiety they may not be able to do the work. When it's come to the review, they review it maybe once a year. They review it to see whether or not the kids still need the same level of services, if that makes sense. Yeah. But usually it's a review once a year to see if the kids still need services, because sometimes, after 1, 2, 3, 4 years, the kids doesn't need that anymore. Then they can stop providing the service. But usually parents will share with me what their accommodation is before they sign it, before they say okay to it, just so they can make sure it is what the kids need.
And then after that, when they go in, maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the line, change it, are you kind of aware of that? And do you play a part in any of that, or is that kind of the school?
Yes, they change it once a year. I'm always on top of it to ask the parent, have they changed the 504? I know all my kids that do have a 504 plan, so because I always check on how they're doing academically, hence. I always check on how they're doing academically, so I'm always on top of are they still needing that plan, and is the school providing the service that they need. So I personally is always on top of it yearly with the parents to tell them you can't just sign it, you gotta read it, you gotta talk, you have to go to the meeting, because they will set a meeting. They will set a 504 meeting once a year. So I always tell the parents they have to be there to make sure that the accommodation is still there, or maybe the kids doesn't need that, we can move it, add something else. Because if I see there is a new problem, I'm always big on asking, okay, we need to add something else to it. So I personally always stay on top of it. I can't speak for everyone, but I personally always stay on top of it.
And it seems like a lot of this is definitely addressing the parents to see how these accommodation and things are going. What age is it more responsibility placed on the child, and when is it still kind of the parents overseeing it? Because I know some people get IEPs, 504s really, really young, and obviously they're not capable enough to understand kind of the magnitude of what's going on. But then as they age, does that responsibility get placed more on them, on the parents?
That's a great question, because a lot of time, you're right, kids will start with a 504 and IEP plan when they were very young. Especially for 504, as the kids grow older, I would say someone like 7th grade, when the kids have a better insight, because a 7th grader can tell you what they need. An 8th grader can tell you what they need. Maybe a 5th, 4th grader, they're in the meeting, but they're not making decisions. The teacher might say that, well, they tend to be losing track of time, so they need a quieter place to do the exam. But as the kids, a lot of schools recommend in high school that the kids sit down in those meetings. Especially the meeting I've been in, I always encourage the kids to sit in the meeting, and every of my clients with a 504 plan, once they reach 7th, 8th grade, they sit in those meetings. Because at this point, the kids know exactly what they need. A kids in high school can tell you, I'm having a very hard time presenting in public. And they can tell you, well, can I record my presentation? You can play it in class. Then they do take into consideration what they say, because they have a better insight. So I would say 7th, 8th grade, definitely high school, the kids do have a say as for what they need, because they know what they're struggling with, and they can tell exactly what is needed to help them. So definitely high school, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I do kind of want to just circle back to something I thought about when we were talking about the parents and like, you know, having like the challenge of them not knowing what it is. When you're starting to put these plans like in place, when you have the initial talks like, hey, your child might need one of these special education plans, is it always like a positive response where it's like, okay, what do we do? Or have you like encountered some parents being hesitant to recognize or not want, kind of in denial, that their child has a learning disability or something like that?
Well, what is the pain? I think like when you tell, the learning disability will be, more like a IEP plan. And a lot of time it depends. Some parents, whether or not, doesn't matter where they are, it's I think it's an understanding. Sometimes some parents feel like that will set their kids behind, but it's in my experience, maybe it's because of my relationship with the parents and the way it's explained to them, because the parents already see that the kids is struggling academically. That's number one. Most of the time it's already there, and in my experience, those parents are a little bit more responsive when you kind of like just don't tell them, hey, the kids need something at school. You really have a talk with them and sit down to say, hey, this is some of the things the kids are struggling with. The school can help them. A lot of time parents will tell you, but I still want them to take the classes everybody else is taking. But if your kids have a 504 plan, they're still going to take the same class. But there is certain degree, like, with a 504 plan, when the kids is severely delayed, I don't think the parents don't even have much choices because the kids cannot operate in a regular classes. They have to have special education for them. But for the most part, it's a 504. The resistance something come into place when the parents does not understand what exactly it is, because to them they feel like the kid's gonna be special education. No. 504 plan is not special education. And once they understand that it's not taking the kids' responsibility, especially parents who take school very seriously, once they understand, no, your kids will still be responsible, and they are more receptive to it. Because at that point they understand, okay, my kids may have an accommodation, but they're still responsible for the work. So they're more receptive to it than an IEP plan.
Got it. Makes sense. And then kind of moving back to a broader spectrum about just these plans in general, what do you find are the biggest challenges and drawbacks, would you say?
The school accepting that the kids need plans. I think I find personally, my personal experience with school. Now, if a kids have an extreme, like a learning disability, cognitively delayed, the kids have those extreme things, I find like there is no backlash, like we're gonna need an IEP plan. I find that the hardest part is the kids that have ADHD, because a kids may have ADHD, but it's impact them, their behavior. They're disruptive in class, they're a little bit all over the place. They need all those things, but it's more like behavioral, it's not cognitive. So that kids clearly gonna need a 504 plan. But you may have a kids with ADHD, with severe ADHD, where it start impacting their learning, meaning that it may come with some difficulty reading and math. That kid may need something more deeper than just the 504 plan. Same diagnosis, but it's impacting them differently. When you have things like ADHD or maybe anxiety, where there is a severe delay in learning, now you have to fight whether or not they have to do the testing to see if this kid is qualified for an IEP plan. Because when it's come to ADHD, anything that falls under the emotional disturbance, people sometimes we're just gonna slap a 504 plan, when no, a 504 plan is not enough. These kids need more than a 504 plan. For example, I know a student who, we started with a 504 plan, ADHD and anxiety, but she already used all the resources that they can give, because 504 plan is limited. IEP plan is more like, okay, anything you need to pass, we're gonna give it to you, whatever that is. Even if it's mean we send you to a specialized school, we have to support that, because it's part of the thing with public school. So for that kids to now move for 504 to IEP, because now we're looking into a possible learning disability because she cannot get certain thing. So now we're requesting the testing. That's when you start to get like, okay, it's just an ADHD. It's just anxiety. Yes, but it's impacting their learning greatly. No matter what we put there, it doesn't work. So in that case, whenever we have to involve testing and things like that, using resources, it's a little bit more challenging than if we just a 504 plan. Yes.
Yeah. So then I guess just off the dome, do you know if there's like, not do you know, do you like, how would you kind of go about getting the schools to address this problem? Or if there's any solutions?
Well, usually if the parents really request it and it shows, but it's like, if it shows that the kids is not doing well academically, because the whole point about it is that if the kids is failing, no matter what they put into place, the kids is still not doing well in math. They're still not doing well. Academically speaking, they are failing. And the parents request that, by law, the school at least have to do the testing. They can do the testing and determine that the kids is not eligible for it, but they have to do the testing because they're failing academically. If they can show that, okay, this kid's been getting all those help, they're failing math, they're failing reading, academically they're not doing well, they're not passing. So at that point, the school has to at least do the process of testing the kids. After doing the testing, based on the assessment result, the school can decide that based on the result, this kid is not qualified for XYZ. Well, some parents will take a lawyer and have an advocate and things like that. I think when I get to the point where the school is giving a lot of pushback, which rarely ever happen, that's when I help the parents find outside help, like, advocate, educational advocate, to actually go with them, because at that point it's becoming a legal issue to go with them and sit with them to advocate for that child. But that will be to the point where if the school tells the child and the child is not qualified, which rarely happen, because if the kid is failing and all that, there may be other things that the school need to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So then I want to end, this is really great insight, and I want to end with like the same kind of question, is what is one thing that you wish like people knew about IEPs and 504 plans that who like have no really idea?
I wish parents know that that's their right, that's the child right to have that service available. I wish they know, because oftentimes when they try to ask for those things, when the school is giving pushback, I'm like, that's part of your job. And by law, you have to educate this child no matter what is stake. I wish parents know that their giving right is a child right to education, no matter what disability that they have, that they know about it. Because oftentimes I hear people say, oh, I'm just going to send my kids to private school. I'm like, stop right there. It's not going to happen, because they have more chance of succeeding in the public school with the help that provide than the private school. So I wish that parents know that that's their legal right for the kids to get an education, and have the right accommodation to ensure that they get a public education.
All right. Well, that's perfect. That gave some really great insight. And I want to thank you again for coming on.
Not a problem at all.
All right.